going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. It is Sunday, September 19th. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. With me, as always, is Chris.
How's it going, everybody?
This is, of course, Andris's bye week, but hopefully he will be back next week. We have a few topics we're going to talk about today. We have three kind of quick ones out of the gate, and then two sort of main stories. So the first topic we're going to talk about involves Christopher Nolan. He's actually leaving Warner Brothers. He's been there a long time. We'll talk about that. Yesterday, September 18th, was Batman Day 2021. Matt Reeves put out a tweet with a picture and talked a little bit about the Batman and what we can expect coming forward. So we'll go through that a little bit. Then we are going to do a full spoilers review. Of course, we won't go beat for beat through the entire story, but we will be spoiling things, specific things we want to talk about the new Clint Eastwood Warner Brothers film, Cry Macho, which I have a non-spoiler review on my channel if you want to check that out. Chris just watched it today. I'm eager to get his thoughts. And then finally, and it sucks that we have to do this, on September 14th, I believe it was, the world was very shocked to find out that someone who I consider one of the funniest people of all time, at least people that I am aware of, Norm Mcdonald, passed away at 51 years old of leukemia, a 9-year battle with the disease that he kept completely secret. Very few people, even his friends and family, were aware of it. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about our love for Norm. Well, I won't presume to say that you love Norm. You'll say that, but okay.
I do love Norm, yeah.
Me too. We're going to talk about some of our favorite bits of his. We're going to talk about his movie. Whatever. We're gonna wax nostalgic on Norm Macdonald. So we'll do that at the bottom end of the show. Of course, we want to remind you that if you don't have time to watch a long ass YouTube video, you can always find audio only versions of this podcast on places like Spotify and Google Podcasts. And of course, we want to encourage you to, if you enjoy this podcast, hit the like button, share it around. It helps the video get to more people. It helps the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. And of course, jump into the comments. Tell us what you thought of Cry Macho, or maybe your favorite memory of Norm Macdonald. I do read all the comments and I respond when I can, so don't think that they are going unread. So we're going to jump into it here. So our first topic is Christopher Nolan. While Warner Brothers did release Tenet in September of last year in theaters as per their deal, Christopher Nolan is known to be very much a theatrical exhibition purist. He's not okay with his movies being just released on HBO Max or anything like that. He's not really okay with other filmmakers' films being released that way if that's not what the filmmaker wants. And of course, with the whole pandemic going on, Warner Brothers, for their entire 2021 slate, decided to release everything day and date in theaters as well as on HBO Max. That got Christopher Nolan's got him a little bit upset. He had some choice words, as did Dune director Denis Villeneuve. So Chris Nolan basically suggested that he was going to be parting ways with Warner Brothers, which I'm not sure. I can't remember. His first film was an independent film called Following. That was obviously not Warner Brothers. I'm not sure if Memento, which was his first studio film, was.
It was not. Memento was still technically independent, but it was not made by Warner Brothers, or wasn't distributed by Warner Brothers. His first one with Warner Brothers was Insomnia, which is my
least favorite Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah, I'd probably say, which is saying something, because it's not a bad little movie.
No, it's not.
When someone's least favorite movie is still pretty good, that's a great track record. But since then, that was 2002. He has released every single movie since through Warner Brothers.
Yeah. And news broke recently. Basically, he was saying he might be leaving Warner Brothers. His latest film, the one he's working on right now, is about Oppenheimer and the development of the nuclear bomb. So Nolan doing a little bit more of the World War II historical stuff after Dunkirk, of course. And of course, all of the studios, all the distributors were clamoring to get him. It is official. He is going to be going over to Universal. And I believe, let me bring it up here, but I believe that the price tag that he got,
dude, Oh my God, I have a list of what he got. It wasn't just the price tag.
Okay.
So I'll let you say it, but I
No,
have a
no, no.
thing.
Go ahead. I don't have it in
Okay.
front of me yet. So
So this is so well before I get into it, I just want to say that I mean this is big news, I think, for a lot of film fans and people who are interested in kind of the industry and how not just watching movies but kind of like the behind the scenes dealings. And Christopher Nolan is had quickly become one of the biggest filmmakers in the world. Like several of his films have made over $1 billion. In a lot of his original projects, not even just the Dark Knight films, made like 800 million, 700 million, whatever. He's one of those few filmmakers that has put out original content that makes big box office, and it gets a lot of critics accolades, and he's like that one of those prestige filmmakers that Denis Villeneuve is also like soon like kind of quickly becoming as well,
yeah.
that you don't really see too often. And this is like the biggest Hollywood breakup since, I don't know, Brangelina. It's a big deal because, yeah, like you said, Warner Brothers was his go-to studio since 2002. They had given him in the past like an unprecedented amount of freedom and creative control in his projects, such as Inception and Interstellar and Dunkirk. And the breakup was kind of not a long time coming, but it stemmed from last year. And I don't have like one specific article to bring it up, but it started brewing when two things happened. One was essentially Tenet that was coming out last year, which part of Christopher Nolan's deal with Warner Brothers was essentially that he was going to get like 20% of the box office gross. So Christopher Nolan was adamant that the Tenet would receive a theatrical release.
Yeah.
He didn't want it to move anywhere, and it did really receive a theatrical release. But there was reports and such that were coming out long after Tenet had released that that Christopher Nolan wanted to delay Tenet to like 2021, which, as other films have come out this year, have shown, although the box office is not roaring back to life, there's still life there, and
Yeah.
there's still money to be made. So he wanted to delay it. Warner Brothers didn't, and they instead kind of made it so that Tenet was like this was the experiment of 2020. That was like the biggest movie that was released in 2020 during the pandemic, and it didn't do that well financially. And Warner Brothers kind of threw him under the bus because there was countless articles about like, oh, Christopher Nolan demands that it be seen in theaters and blah blah blah, making it seem like he was the one that was strong arming him to
Right.
release it in July, August, September, whatever it actually came out. When reports later have indicated that he wanted to move it, and they wanted to move it, and the spin coming out of the studio was making him seem like this unreasonable douche that was like, I demand my movie be released in the summer of 2020, pandemic be damned. When in reality, he was like, I want to make money off of this, so let's push it back.
Yeah.
So that was the start of it. And then, like you mentioned, essentially the transition that Warner Brothers decided that all of the movies, without seemingly consulting anybody, any of the filmmakers, anybody working in those films, that all of the movies were going to be released day and date on HBO Max. That was the final straw that kind of broke the camel's back, because
Yeah.
he was fucking pissed. And yeah, well, I guess what I was going to ask was essentially like, it's been known for a bit. I think that it was expected that he wasn't going to stick with Warner Brothers because we heard the rumblings of it. But how do I say this? I find this like really fascinating. I don't know. I'm just gonna toss it back to you. Essentially, his choice to go to Universal. Do you think this is a big deal, or do you think that we're like blowing it out of proportion by talking about this?
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning because he is, one of the biggest filmmakers in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense. I mean, Warner Brothers really did a lot of filmmakers dirty. Of course, the one exception being Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman 1984. They also had back end deals where they would get a cut of the box office gross. And when Warner Brothers decided to release it on HBO Max, they made a deal with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, and they said, listen, because we're not going to put it in theaters, or we're going to give it a very limited theatrical run. I don't remember We want to honor the back end deal, so we're going to go under the assumption that it would have made $1 billion, and we will give you your percentage cut of that. And that was the right thing to do. That was the fair thing to do. But then they didn't do it for anybody else. Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, and of course, also a lot of these movies are heavily financed by Legendary Pictures. They were supposed to get box office cut, and then so that, I believe, there was possibly a lawsuit going forward there. I think it only makes sense that this was the choice Nolan made, not necessarily Universal specifically, but to walk away from Warner Brothers. And I think it's good, because I think, like I said, Warner Brothers did some people dirty, and they've made their bed, and now they got to lie in it.
Yeah.
And they've lost a guy who's made them billions of dollars.
Yeah, definitely their most kind of prestigious filmmaker that was with them for decades. And I'm actually pretty excited about the move, and it's not because I'm jumping on the bandwagon of Snyder fans that are hating on Warner Brothers. I don't hate Warner Brothers, but it seemed like for the past few years there really was kind of like a monopoly of the box office and of the movies that kind of that made the most money. And it was Disney, they had Pixar and Marvel and Star Wars. They were number one. And then closely followed was Warner Brothers. And a lot of these other studios that, I'd grown up with weren't really they were still having like a successful movie or two. Things like Universal, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, which doesn't exist anymore. So it's exciting to me because it's like, okay, for a bit, it's been like Disney is just making all the money, followed by Warner Brothers that also has a lot of franchises, including, comic book movies and Harry Potter and such like that. But I'm excited that, like, okay, maybe other studios are coming back. It's not just going to be the same studios making the same stuff that we see all the time. Yeah, Universal, if this all goes well, this deal, then they probably have like a good partnership. They could get a good partnership with him for years to come.
Well, because he was at Warner Brothers for so long, we know that, excuse me, we know that Christopher Nolan is a very loyal filmmaker. And I think that's why he was so upset with Warner Brothers, because that loyalty didn't go the other way, right?
Exactly, completely. He felt, I think, justifiably kind of backstabbed by them, because there was a lot of changing hands of studio heads. So yeah, it made sense that he moved. I'm glad that he is moving. I'd like to see some more kind of big prestigious films coming out of studios that aren't just, Disney or Warner Brothers. I pulled up, not to go on for this too much longer, but I pulled up the demands that Christopher Nolan had that were granted to him.
Okay.
So there's a few more, but there's 6. One is that the budget of the film is going to be $100 million. Okay. So which is actually one of his lower budgeted films since The Dark Knight. Marketing is going to be $100 million as well. So he's going to get 20% of first dollar gross. Now that's very significant, because a lot of times in Hollywood, whether it's actors or filmmakers, they would sign a contract and the terminology would be that they would get a percentage of a back end, essentially meaning that after a movie is, gone through the theatrical run, and after it's recouped its budget and this and that, if there's anything left, then you can get some. And there's been a lot of, big lawsuits over the years of what's known as Hollywood accounting, which is essentially Hollywood accountants being like, oh, this movie that was like this big, massive hit, that the newspapers and news articles all wrote about, it actually didn't make any money. So you don't get any percent of the back end, because so it's him saying that it's first dollar gross means what it sounds like. He's going to get paid regardless. So that's huge. He gets 100% creative control. Makes sense. The movie is going to be playing in at least 100 days in theaters first. Now that's huge. That's a long time in general. But especially during the pandemic, when people are talking about shortening the window to 45 days, he's adamant that, like, no, this is not going to, you're not going to see this in streaming. If you want to see it, you're going to have to either see it in theaters or you're going to wait, which incentivizes people going. And the last thing is that the studio, Universal, cannot release another film of theirs either three weeks prior nor 3 weeks after, meaning there's a 6-week buffer that Universal can't cross for this one movie. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
That's
That's a power move.
That's a power move. I've never I mean, I don't know about some of the dealings that Steven Spielberg might have had in like the 90s or such, but I've I've never heard of a studio just bending over backwards this much for one director. Good for him, man. I mean, I'm excited for the movie too. I love his big kind of spectacle stuff, but I'm excited that he's going to do seemingly a straightforward drama again, because it's been like since The Prestige, I think, since he's done just a drama. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. All right,
Mhm.
let's move on. So just quickly, I'll bring it up here. Yesterday was, of course, Batman Day, which is relatively meaningless, and it changes every year for whatever reason. They just sort of
Mhm.
arbitrarily say, this day will be Batman Day.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't mean a goddamn thing. But
Mm-mm.
to celebrate, Matt Reeves, who is, of course, the director of The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, which comes
Mhm.
out, I believe, in March. Looking forward
Yeah.
to that.
Mhm.
He just tweeted out the following, and I will clip out the tweet and put it on the screen when I edit this. But he wrote, "Wow, I've been away for so long, just popping my head out of the editing room for a moment to say Happy Batman Day. Can't wait to share a lot more with you." With you all 4 weeks from today at DC Fandom.
Oh
Sorry about
yeah.
Sorry about the messy desk, long hours, the Batman. Of course, last summer, I believe it was summer 2020, DC did Fandom, which was essentially like an online Comic Con.
Mhm.
So they had panels for Wonder Woman 84 and the Batman and all this kind of stuff. It was just, I think it was a 2 or 3 hour online thing you could tune into for
Mhm.
free, and it was pretty cool.
It was. Yeah.
Some of it was pretty cheesy, but whatever. Um, but that, of course, is where they dropped that first trailer for the Batman, which had us all freaking out because we're Bat
Mhm.
geeks. And of course, Matt Reeves was speaking to Aisha Tyler in the Fandom, which I'm pretty sure was all green screen, but whatever. And talking about the film, and it's a really interesting panel. I think it's about 20 minutes long.
Mhm.
So they are doing another Fandom next month. We've been assuming for a while that we'll probably get another trailer.
Mhm.
But he went on to say, hang on, let me find it here. He said, what's really important about this iteration is that a lot of the other stories are about how he had to master his fear and master himself in order to become Batman. And that in that Batman state, he's sort of his best self. For me, what was exciting was not doing that, not doing the origin, not doing what we've seen done so beautifully in other movies. In the
Mhm.
middle of this criminological experiment, we will see him in the becoming of Batman. We're going to see him make mistakes as Batman, to see him grow and fail and be heroic and do all of the things that we associate with Batman, but in a way that felt very human and very flawed. Chris, what do you make of those comments?
Uh, very excited. I mean, I've been excited for this movie ever since I heard about, Matt Reeves being attached and Robert Pattinson. And of course, that trailer that came out last year when the movie was supposed to come out in 2021. It was supposed to come out October this year. It's a
Yep.
bummer, but we're very close, March. The trailer was amazing.
Yeah.
Seriously, I've seen that a million times. Massive Batman fan, and this is really looking like it's going in the direction that I want it to be. And the more that I hear Matt Reeves talk about it, the more excited I get. Hearing,
You said Bat Reeves.
did I say Bat Reeves?
What it
Okay.
sounded like to me.
Well, I mean that's his name now, Bat Reeves. It's a badge of honor. He he's hitting the nail right on the head of like what I think a lot of Batman fans, myself included, want from a movie is that I think everybody knows the origin story by now.
Yep.
We've seen it done. We've seen it, even though it wasn't necessarily Batman Year One, we've seen the origin, we've seen kind of the beginnings of Batman all the way back from Tim Burton's films. Then, of course, Batman Begins, which did a massive deep dive. The whole show Gotham, which is not necessarily about Bruce Wayne, but they show a young Bruce Wayne a lot through it.
Mhm.
We've seen it. We've seen it. And I think that everybody's just kind of wanting a Batman that's a little bit more secure, just kind of Batman in media res, already doing it.
Mhm.
He's already met some of these villains. Some of them are still new. Uh, I don't need to see him figuring out like, oh, bats, that's the symbol I should use. I don't need to see him making the assembling the Bat Cave again. Just show Batman being Batman, the detective, the greatest detective in the world.
Well, and even like Batman versus Superman, we clock in with
Yeah.
a Batman who's in his 40s, but we still see the flashback to his parents in the alley. They
Yeah.
did it again in Joker. Like,
Yeah.
seen it.
We get it. We get it. Yeah, we know what happens to his family. I hope we don't even get a flashback in this because we don't need it. It's I know that some people have criticized how the new Spider-Man series with Tom Holland hasn't really mentioned Uncle Ben, but to me, I'm like, no, we don't need it. I get it. Everyone knows what happened with Spider-Man, and everybody certainly knows what happened with Batman.
Well, and actually, like, just to stay on Spider-Man for a couple of seconds, I think it's in Far From Home where he's packing his suitcase and you just see like the monogram like BP on the suitcase, little thing, or even when he's talking to Ned in Homecoming where he says something about like, I can't leave Aunt May right now after everything that's happened. Like, it's a little subtle nod. That's all we need. We know.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be happy with him being in Wayne Manor and there's like an oil painting of his parents, over a mantelpiece or something. And he has a little moment looking at it. That's fine. I just don't need to see a flashback of him in the alley. No. Anyway, that was a young child running, by the way, in case anybody can figure out. It's like, okay. Yeah, no, I'm very excited and I'm stoked for DC fandom. I know they haven't promised that there's going to be a new trailer, but I think everyone's expecting it, especially Bat Reeves's comments seem to hint like, okay, here's a little hint until DC fandom. So we're going to be seeing some new footage. The movie, like I said, was supposed to come out next month. So I can imagine that even though he's still editing, they probably are in a pretty good shape with it. Like probably a lot of scenes are done. Maybe they're tightening up certain things in special effects, but they probably have a lot more footage than what they did last year. Because even then, they were still early into production. That teaser at DC fandom was really like, oh, we've only been shooting for like maybe a month, and they've,
he said in the panel that when they called that trailer, they'd only shot 25% of the movie.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So there's still so much that we have not even seen from this movie, and I can't wait. I think DC fandom is October 20 something. I don't know. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, let me look that up here. Yeah, that first trailer is so good.
It's so good. Has that Nirvana cover?
Yeah.
Love it.
I on my first date with my girlfriend, the moment I knew that it was gonna be good, at one point she turned to me and she was like, do you want to watch the Batman trailer? I was like, yes, I do.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. Is it gonna tell me when fandom is?
Come on. This is making for great podcast. Do a little dance or something, man. Entertain the people. Just start stripping. But give me a date, though. For the love of goat.
October 16th.
16th, there it is.
Saturday, October 16th. That's
awesome.
That whole pause is going to get cut in the editing, hopefully.
Maybe.
No, just let it in. Just leave it.
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. So, we'll be looking forward to that. And I'm sure after fandom, I'm sure we'll talk about whatever footage. I know that at CinemaCon last month, they did screen some new footage. I don't think it was a trailer. I think it was kind of more of a sizzle reel, but
yeah.
But whatever it is, we'll talk about it on the show. Rest assured. So we're going to move on to our, excuse me, one of our two sort of main topics today, and that is the new Clint Eastwood directed and starring film Cry Macho. This is based on a novel of the same name that came out, I believe, I think it was 1975. It is basically the story of Clint Eastwood plays Mike, who is a former rodeo rider. And his boss, played by Dwight Yoakam, basically says, I need you to go down to Mexico. My estranged wife or my ex-wife has our son, and I'm pretty sure he's being abused. I need you to go get him and bring him back. And that is sort of your basic premise, but we are spoiling things. So we do find out that the wife is very rich. She's got, it almost comes across like she's the head of a drug cartel or something. I don't think she is, but she's got the bodyguards everywhere in the big palace. And she sends some goons after them. And again, we'll get to the plot very soon. But I'm going to ask you, Chris, you kind of knew my thoughts on this movie going into it. And I have an idea of what you thought from the chat, but why don't you give me your overall thoughts on that? Or, before we get there, What do you think of Clint Eastwood as a filmmaker?
Clint Eastwood is a talented filmmaker that I think is kind of hit and miss for me as a
Uh,
director. He's done. I'm gonna pull up some of his credits, but he's done some truly terrific films. I mean, obviously, as an actor, the dude's a legend. You know, I've seen everything from his classic westerns to Dirty Harry. As a director, I think that he's done some incredible things. Probably the best of which is for me is Unforgiven.
Right.
But you know, he's done Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima, which are terrific. Mystic River, which is
Love that movie.
which yeah, fantastic. He's done other ones like Pale Rider is pretty good. He's done what is it? Play Misty for Me, which is his first one, which is a very good little thriller. But then he's done other ones that are just like that's not very good. Like he's done other sequels to Dirty Harry, which aren't very good. He and in most recently, I think he's been doing his lesser works. Everything from Hereafter to to the 1517 to Paris to Jersey Boys, J. Edgar also. It's just he doesn't he has a consistent style and tone, but it doesn't have a consistent quality. He's just been churning them out, man, especially in the last 10 years, which is crazy because he's been, 80, he's 91 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I stood with him as a filmmaker. So going into this, I was kind of not looking forward to it. I haven't really been excited for a Clint Eastwood movie in a while, but especially everything from the trailer just made it seem like this wasn't doing it for me. It just kind of seemed like tired retreads of themes that he's explored before, and that's what the movie was. The movie's not very good. I had a drag watching this. It's not very long. It's only an hour 45 minutes, but it felt very long.
Yeah.
I think this is one of his lesser works ever that I've seen of his.
Yeah, I did not like this movie at all. I hadn't seen a trailer. I just sort of went in cold, but I found it, like you said, it felt very long. I found it very cliche. Like you said, it it explored a lot of themes that we've seen him explore before. I think I don't want to say. My buddy was asking me today. He was like, "So do you think it was selfish that he cast himself?" No, I mean he's Clint Eastwood. He's got all the clout in the world. I don't understand why. I mean, you were telling me that the character in the book is like 35 or 40 or something. I don't know why Clint Eastwood cast himself in this, because I don't want to come across as being ageist or anything like that, but like the man's age and like you said, he's 91, like he is getting very frail now because he's 91. But like that becomes problematic for certain things in this movie that if he had just cast himself in a side role, if he wanted to be in it and had somebody else in the main role, I think that would have solved a lot of those problems.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot that's wrong with this film, but the biggest one, and it's the most glaring one, is the casting of himself in this role. Again, I haven't read the book, so I'm not just saying this to be like a purist, but in the book, it's about a character that's not even 40 yet. It's in late 30s. And I was reading about it and how there's mentions throughout the book that like by the time you turn 20 as like a horse breaker, as like a rodeo, as someone who rides in the rodeo, you're already too old in a way. Like it's very much a young man's game. And that wouldn't be an issue if the film and the script treated Clint Eastwood's character the age that he is. And again, it's not being ageist. It's just that there are things that happen in this film that it wouldn't happen. It doesn't make sense for the age that he is.
Right.
And I think the only reason why he cast himself is that this is a project that he's been attached to for quite a while. This movie, I think, was trying to be made and all the way back into the 80s. And even then he might have been a bit too old. Even at like 60, he might have been too old. I was reading some reviews where people said that maybe he should have cast his longtime collaborator, or he's collaborated with a couple times, Bradley Cooper, I think would have fit in this role.
Yeah, I could see that.
And the reason why we're saying it is because it just doesn't, there's multiple things, and Court will back me up, but from the very beginning, I was messaging Court because there's a scene. It's kind of the inciting incident. Clint Eastwood is Mike. He's kind of like this old retired rodeo, blah blah blah. He's all washed up, and he has a buddy that he kind of is in debt to an extent. That's helped turn his life around, and his friend is talking to him about why he's washed up, and mentioning everything except the fact that the dude is 91 fucking years old. Like,
Right.
he's just like, oh, well, I mean, you were the best, but then the accident and then the drinking. And it's like, when did the accident happen? When he was, 40? Because that's ages ago. And from there, he enlists this 91-year-old man who looks and sounds like a 91-year-old man. Like, he's looking healthy. He doesn't look like he has any, he looks like he's healthy for his age. But by 91, you're frail. Like, he walks frail, he talks frail, he just looks tired. And the whole plot hinges on this guy being like, hey, go on this potentially dangerous mission to go bring my son back. Like, 91 years old, I don't know, I feel like more people would be concerned even just to have him babysit, let alone drive across the country and bring back your kid. I don't know. From the beginning, I was like, this doesn't make sense. And it only gets worse from there.
Well, and we do see, and I will remind me to talk about the villain at some point, but the sort of main antagonist of this movie, I don't remember the character's name, might have been Aurelio, but he's like sort of the head bodyguard of this kid's mother in Mexico, and he's just kind of following them across Mexico, occasionally meeting up with them and trying to intimidate them and whatever. And there's a scene where Clint Eastwood's character, Mike, punches him in the face. And I felt bad, but I actually laughed out loud because, again, Clint Eastwood, I'm not mocking him that he's not able to throw a really good punch. He's 91, but it looked comical because it was slow and telegraphed. And then this, I don't know, maybe 30-year-old like built bodyguard just goes down.
Yeah.
I was just like, what? Like, why not in that situation? Why not just use a stunt double? Why not just shoot it like from behind the shoulder? It would have been fun.
I mean, it would have maybe looked better on the screen, but I think my mind still would have went to the fact that, they eventually would have cut back to frail Clint Eastwood. And it's just like, there's no way. Like, we've been in the real world. I'm sure that there are some examples of like people in their 90s who are bodybuilders. I don't know. I'm sure somewhere in the world that has existed, but Clint Eastwood's not, and you could just see him. And even before that scene, there's another scene where like the kid is kind of like wrestling with him, kind of, and he like kind of throws these awkward jabs, and the kid, straight faced, was like, okay, you're pretty fast for an old guy.
Right.
And I'm like, no, he's not. Like, dude, that's nothing. And not only is he not fast, but there's no weight behind his punches.
Yeah.
Not only I don't even think that punch that Clint threw would have even affected that guy. Like, if this was real life and not movie land, the guy just would have been like, what? Like, he wouldn't have been knocked back and bleeding. Also, I don't know. But yeah, that's just another example of that. The reason why it shouldn't have cast himself is that he's still playing kind of this rugged cowboy that is intimidating. And the character, everybody's treating him as though he's just past his prime, like maybe 40s, maybe 50s. That's what they're treating him as someone that's like, oh, he could still kick your ass. He could still, pick up the ladies. He could still, but he's just a little bit over the hill. But he's not. Clint Eastwood, I'm sorry, he's just not. And we talked about it. Clint essentially picks up two women in this movie.
The only two women with actual speaking roles in the entire film.
Yes.
As far as I remember, anyway.
Yeah. One of them, I like both of them. I thought, they're not given too much to do, but I like the character of Marta, who's, she was the owner of that kind of restaurant that that's like halfway into the movie where they stay for way too long. I don't know why they're staying there for that long. I don't know if I missed an explanation. But essentially both of them, like, Marta looks maybe middle-aged, but even middle-age that's too young. That's at least
he's
40,
still 40 years older. Yeah.
At least 40 years old, maybe more. And then the other woman, she's 39. And I messaged you because I was thinking, like, there was a scene that's played straight, and I couldn't tell if the character was messing with him. And it doesn't seem like she was. Like you mentioned, there's other dialogue throughout that just kind of indicates that this character, played by Fernanda Yurejola, I apologize for butchering that name.
Better than I could do.
But she's 39 and he's 91.
Yeah.
She's 39 and she looks terrific. And there's a scene where she's kind of like in the negligee and she's like inviting him sensually over to her bed. And he's like, no, and he just declines. And she gets upset. And it's like, he's not rich. There's no benefit for this character to get with him. So other than the fact that she must be turned on by him. And again, 48-year-old, 49, however old Bradley Cooper is, I could kind of buy a 39-year-old woman, maybe kind of putting herself out there for Bradley Cooper.
Sure.
But not for 91-year-old anybody. Now, Clint Eastwood was one of the best looking dudes ever. I mean, you look at him in Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Dude's handsome, probably could get any woman he wanted back in the day, but not at 91. And it happens twice in this movie.
I actually found it kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, later on in the film, which is what I was referring to earlier when I was talking to you, was like the kid, the son, Raffo, he says, my mom brings home a different dude every day. Like, it just sounds like she's like a voracious sexual appetite.
Mm-hmm.
But for a 91-year-old Clint Eastwood who's trying to take her son away from her, which she does not want to have, I didn't buy that for a second.
Yeah, even narratively, it doesn't quite make sense. Again, that's why I initially thought maybe there was she was planning something, but she wasn't. At the end of the day, it was just this awkward scene.
Yeah.
Which kind of plays into the other problems that I had with the film. Like I said, the biggest glaring obstacle to enjoying this movie is the bad casting. But the entire movie just doesn't quite work. The story is pretty basic. It's not a bad story. Go across the border, pick up my son. There's family problems there. There's things that are ripe for drama, but it just never comes together. And not only does Clint Eastwood sort of present himself on screen as a 91-year-old man, but his direction now kind of feels as though you're kind of listening to someone who's at that age tell a story, where it kind of meanders and it doesn't quite. It seems like they're kind of losing their train of thought. And he could be sharp as a tack for all I know in person, but the movie just has kind of like a slow pace, and it doesn't have that deliberate slow pacing of like an art house film. It's just kind of awkwardly like, okay, we'll film this person from this angle saying their lines, pause, cut to Clint saying his line, pause, and vice versa through most of the film. So it's just kind of like, it just kind of like feels like this awkwardly paced drama that doesn't reach the drama, because everything feels phony. Nothing comes across as like authentic.
Right. Well, and I will say, one thing I will say is I think Clint Eastwood, as miscast as he was, I think he's pretty good in the film. Mm-hmm. Not some of his best work by any stretch of the imagination, but he has one scene where he and Raffo are sleeping in that church, mm-hmm. and Raffo asks him about his son who passed away years ago from a car accident. Mm-hmm. I thought he was legitimately amazing in that scene. I really liked that scene. I thought the woman who played Marta was good. Dwight Yoakam was whatever. He didn't really have much to do. Yeah. I hate doing this because he's a child actor. I think the actor's about 15. Mm-hmm. Eduardo Minette, I believe is his name, who plays Raffo. I thought he was really stiff. Mm-hmm. I would say the other biggest problem with this film is the screenplay. I think the screenplay has a lot of problems, but to this kid's credit, he's given some of the worst dialogue in the movie to have to work with. Mm-hmm. There's one scene sort of right after he meets Clint Eastwood. They're sitting down, they're having a drink or something, and Clint Eastwood's trying to convince him to come back to America to be with his father. And it just became this incredibly repetitive scene where the kid is angry and then he's hopeful and then he's angry and then he's hopeful. And I sort of did this in my non-spoiler review, but it's kind of like, I hate my father. And Clint's like, well, maybe he's trying to make up for lost time. He's like, you think he's You think he's trying to make up for lost time? Yeah, I think so. No, he didn't call me on my birthday. I hate him. Well, he's got a lot of horses. He's got a lot of horses. Like he's the big boss man. Like it was just like a lot of that.
Mhm.
And it's just like, I felt bad for this actor because the dialogue was so bad. And then, we jump back to the beginning with Clint and Dwight Yoakam. And like, you want to talk about expository dialogue.
Mhm.
It's basically like, again, I'm exaggerating like a little bit, but not much.
Mhm.
It's basically like, Mike, listen, I'm your boss. You owe me, and now you're fired, but I need you to go do this and this, and this. Like just explaining who you are, who I am, what this movie is about.
Mhm.
I thought the screenplay was really pretty awful in this film. How did you feel about it?
Yeah. In the beginning, it truly felt almost like a screenwriting Mad Lib in the sense that it would have most of it just kind of like, this character says, I am insert relation and I want you to insert objective. Like it just felt, like you said, very much, it didn't feel like natural people. It just kind of felt like, I'm telling you who I am. I'm telling you our relationship. I'm telling you what I want you to do. And it felt like that for a bit. And then as it got on, it kind of went away from the Mad Lib feel, but it just felt awkward. And I agree. I think that the kid, unfortunately, was maybe the weakest performance. But he's a very, very new actor. He hasn't been in a lot of things. He's very young. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's a combination of him being a young, inexperienced actor, with probably not great direction from Clint, because a lot of people in this I felt were kind of awkward and stilted, and bad dialogue. And you combine all of those, and you combine all of those, you get a bad performance.
Right.
And another thing part of the reason why I said like maybe bad direction by Clint is that Clint Eastwood throughout his career as a director has been known as like one take Clint or one shot Clint.
Yeah.
And he's one of those filmmakers, and there's not many, but there are others that have this similar style of just like, we're doing it in one take. We're going to rehearse a lot, but then we're going to do it in one take. And when that's done well, like as long as you don't completely break character, even if you flub your lines, we're going to keep it in. And when it's done well, that can result on screen a bit of a loose feeling, a bit of a naturalism that has almost kind of like an improvisational feel. I've seen it done well in other films, and the proof's in the pudding. Like I said, Clint Eastwood has made great films before, with the same kind of one-shot kind of mentality. But when it's done poorly, you can see it. You can see it on the screen, because a lot of times if an actor is kind of unprepared, and I'm not saying a bad actor, I'm saying even a great actor, if they're not getting into the rhythm of the scene, their first take's not going to be their best. Even if they don't flub it, even if they get all the lines correct, sometimes an actor just needs to kind of marinate. Sometimes an actor needs to kind of get into the scene, do it a couple times, work off the co-stars, and then maybe that third, fourth, fifth take, that's the money. But he didn't have that. So there's times, especially with what's his name, Dwight Yoakam?
Yeah.
In the beginning, and not to harp on this guy, but it really felt like when they were in his house and they were kind of talking by his fireplace or whatever it was, it was just like, this guy, this is clearly his first and only take. And they're like, yeah, good enough, we're done. And that's how I felt through a lot of it. It felt a lot of it was just like, yeah, that'll do, whatever, good enough. You hit the lines, you didn't break character, good enough. And it didn't work here.
Yeah, there was that moment where he's telling Clint about the mission, what he wants him to do, and Clint's like, do whatever. And I remember there's one line that really stood out to me. Dwight Yoakam, his delivery was like, just the way he said it. He was just like, "You owe me, Mike." And I was just like, "What? Like, you gotta have another take on that." Like,
yeah,
it just sounded so, I don't know, maybe pedantic is not the word, but like, you're in a position of power, but you're almost like, you're saying it almost in a pleading way. I don't know. It didn't work for me at all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's why I really think that no one truly stood out in this to me. Like you said, Clint's not bad in this. I think that, but he's not really given too much besides that church scene when he's kind of getting emotional. But even then I don't know, even in the church scene, I really tell was Clint crying? Was he just coughing? Because he just has that naturally gravelly voice now. So I don't know. I didn't feel any of the emotion in this. Some things that I'll say that are kind of positives is that it's not a bad looking film.
No, I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah, the cinematography is by Ben Davis, who's been in the business for a while. He's done a few Marvel movies. He's done 3 billboards in Ebbing, Missouri. He's been in the business for a while, and it looks good. And there's some good, shots of Clint or whoever in the sunset and such. So it looks and sounds like a movie. It's not like embarrassingly made. And to Clint's credit, he still seems to have a visual sense of storytelling. There's little things of the way that maybe certain things are framed, like there's a scene, there's a brief moment of kind of Raffo and this young girl sitting in the back of a pickup truck, and then through the window there's like 3 little kids that are kind of watching them. You know what I mean? It's like 2 teenagers that are maybe kind of flirting, and like their little siblings that are just kind of bugging them. Just the way that that information is kind of given visually, it still seems like, okay, Clint is a filmmaker. He understands visual language.
Yeah.
Again, the story just wasn't there. I didn't care for the story, the themes of of this world weary character, not world weary, but just down and out. He's tired. He's been there. He's done that. I used to be somebody, you know what I mean? We've seen that. And there's nothing really new offered here besides the fact of, this isn't new, but besides Clint kind of going into the monologue about how his wife and son died, we're not really given an insight as to what this guy's deal is. Like, that's a big massive thing. But what I'm trying to say is that there's so many like long speeches of Clint just being like, I used to be this and I used to do that, and macho, that's don't be macho as in being strong and being tough, it's just an act, blah blah blah. But I never really got a sense of like, what is the theme? Like, why is macho bad in this context? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just yeah, totally. I do also want to bring up, we touched on a little bit earlier, but the villain, I think his name was Aurelio. I said it in the non-spoiler review, and I don't think I could word it any better here. I found the villain to be comically ineffective. I didn't find him intimidating in any way, but like, they just keep getting away from him. Like, Clint throws that little punch and like down this guy goes. Another time they just sort of sneak out the back, and then he's out of the movie for another 20 minutes. And at the end of the movie, he gets beaten up by a chicken. So,
oh my God. Dude.
Now listen, professional cockfighting chicken could kick the shit out of me. I know it. But I'm not like a 30-year-old built bodyguard who's supposed to be scary in a movie. He gets beaten up by a chicken, and then he's out.
That was like a moment out of like a Nickelodeon kids movie. You know what I mean? Like the villain, like, I'll get you, and oh no, a chicken. But also that whole sequence, it was like maybe 2.5 minutes. My wife wasn't watching this with me, but she kind of came in just to sit down on the couch just around that scene. And it made us laugh out loud because it essentially happened like this. It was Clint Eastwood in the kid in the car, and we were seeing them driving, and they were just kind of talking. That was him. That's Clint talking. So they're just talking about life. Then, oh my gosh, for like 30 seconds, the bad guy kind of runs them off the road. They get out of the car. The chicken attacks them. They go into another car. And then the next cut is just them like driving again.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened. They're just in a different car. And my wife and I both laughed out loud because it was almost like a Family Guy edit, where it's like nothing happened from this to that. It was literally like, okay, this guy ran us off the road. He's really ineffective and he's not really threatening. Okay, back to driving and talking.
Right.
Why even have it then?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I am not going to recommend this movie to anybody. and it's a shame because I really do like Clint Eastwood as an
Mhm.
actor. I like him as a filmmaker. I do agree that he can be hit or miss. I didn't see 1517 to Paris. I heard that it was, and I applaud the guy for trying the thing where you got the actual people who were involved in this real life thing to put them in the movie. I applaud giving it a try. My understanding is it did not work at all.
No.
I really liked Richard Jewell, which was last year or 2 years ago. I
Mhm.
enjoyed Sully for the most part. I dug the Mule. And I hadn't seen a trailer for this one. So going in, I was like, it's a Clint Eastwood movie. It's a Western, and
Mhm.
I think this will work. Didn't
Mhm.
work for me at all.
No.
Didn't work for you at all.
Mm-mm.
Is there anything else specific you want to bring up, or shall we move on?
No, we can move on. It's not very good. It's sad. I mean, he's done other kind of like I said, I think that if you want to see if you're a big Clint Eastwood fan, both of him as a filmmaker and actor, I would say, and you want to watch kind of a swan song, something that really kind of encapsulates um his career and all of his themes into one. Watch Unforgiven, which was originally going to be his last film, but that was a big hit, so he started doing more over 30 years ago. And if you want something more recent, watch Gran Torino, which is also very similar, and it's also very much a Clint Eastwood swan song to his cinematic persona. And this one is just not worth it for even for the biggest Clint Eastwood fan.
Right. All right, so we're gonna move on to our final topic of the day. It's the shitty one. It's the sad one. It's the
Yeah.
one that sucks. So the other day, September 14th, Norm Macdonald passed away after a secret 9-year battle with what turned out to be leukemia.
Mhm.
Um, you were the one who sent me the news. You were the one who ruined my day.
Yep, it was my
Um,
fault.
it was absolutely shocking. Like I said off the top, I've always thought that Norm Macdonald is one of the funniest people of all time.
Mhm.
I've been watching Saturday Night Live since I was a kid. I've watched, they used to do reruns, so I've watched from the 70s all the way up. Um, for my money, hands down, he's the gold standard of, or was, I should say, the gold standard of Weekend Update hosts.
Mhm.
Um, I I really liked Seth Meyers. I really liked Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Never was so into Fallon. Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd together were great.
Mhm.
Um, but there was something about Norm's delivery, and that was true of everything he did, whether it was conversations or stand up or movies. He had that amazing sort of deadpan delivery. Um, he had an incredible command of the English language. He
Mhm.
was a very, very smart man, a very well read man, from what I can tell.
Mhm.
But yeah, when he would get on Update and do the OJ jokes or some of the classics of, yep, you guessed it, Frank Stallone, or of course, so the Germans would have us believe. And a lot of the times you would know that that was the punchline that was coming, and it didn't matter because the delivery was so good.
Mhm.
Before we get into sort of specific things that we liked or that we want to talk about, do you remember where you first saw Norm, or sort of what were your impressions of him as a comedian?
Yeah, so I think I was first introduced to him because I was pretty young, so I didn't see kind of some of the classic bits from SNL until I was a little bit older, maybe late 90s, early 2000s. That's when my family really kind of started showing it to me. So I saw him in a few things. I mean, he was in Billy Madison. I think that was the first thing that I saw him in, and then he did like a bunch of voice acting work and a lot of things from Dr. Dolittle to some cartoons and such. So I'd seen him around, but it really wasn't until I started seeing him in like SNL, and then the classic bits of the Weekend Update, and just seeing his stand up, whether it's on Comedy Central or any of his amazing interviews at late night talk show. Like, he's one of the late night talk shows are kind of hit and miss. I mean, it's there's been some awful guests in, from Conan to Jay Leno to David Letterman. Norm is always funny. You could
Yeah.
watch any of his from that, and it's always funny. And I've always liked him. There was always something about him where even when he was doing kid friendly stuff, there's such an idiosyncratic quality to his humor where, like you said, it's deadpan, but it's also a lot of like just awful jokes. Like it's like non-comedy,
Yeah.
where it's just he'll do these long ramp ups with twists and turns, this long gestating story for just a lame pun of a punchline, but that's the joke. And I don't know. He was truly an original. I know that's probably cliched to say it. Everybody's saying that, but it's true. There was no one, I think, that was as courageous as him, in the sense of just going out in front of people and telling what is a god awful groaner of a joke, but it made him laugh. And I think it made him laugh to say that and to have an audience reaction of like, oh God, just because there were a lot of times, especially you watch Weekend Updates, there's a lot of times some of the funniest bits to me is when he'll say something and the audience does not laugh at all. And he's just like, like he just,
well, yeah, he would like, if a joke bombed, he would sort of like stare down the camera, and sometimes that was the funniest part. Like I saw a clip the other day of him telling one of his patented OJ jokes, and the crowd just kind of goes quiet, and then he looks at the camera and he goes, "The audience is torn," and that made it that much funnier, right?
Yeah.
And I've been watching a lot of comedians or people who knew him talking about him, and they were saying like, he liked to troll people. He would sometimes go do a stand-up set and purposefully bomb because he thought it was funny. He didn't care if he was getting laughs from the crowd, as long as he was making himself laugh.
Yeah,
he was happy, which I think is great. And one specific, because we were saying we'll talk about some specific bits and whatever. One bit that I love, he was one of the roasters on the Comedy Central roast of Bob Saget, and those are rough. Like those people go hard. And he went up, and the first thing is like throughout the entire show, except when he was up doing his bit, when he's sitting on the dais, he's just sitting there reading the newspaper, reading from the sports section, not paying attention at all, which was hilarious. And then he goes up and he starts telling these, like, I don't even want to give them the courtesy of calling them dad jokes. That's an insult to dad jokes. Like, I remember he's talking about Greg Giraldo, and he says something like, he has the eyes of an eagle and the soul of a hawk. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is for the birds. And then he's talking about Bob Saget. He's like, you can always tell when Bob Saget has something on his mind, a hat. And like, they were so purposefully bad. And but what's so good is like, when you watch it, at first the audience is like silent and it's awkward, but then you can hear, as he goes along, you can hear the audience starting to figure out that he's trolling, and they start getting that that's kind of what's funny about it. And by the end, like, Bob Saget is laughing his head off, and it's wonderful. And I highly recommend anyone can go on YouTube and find that bit. But it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific bits from late night or stand up or anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, like you touched on them, a lot of the Weekend Updates. This week I've just been watching a ton of compilations of it. So like all of them are great. A more recent one, it wasn't a Weekend Update, but I think this was in the last maybe 5-6 years. But the infamous Moth Joke on Conan O'Brien, which again is I think is quintessential Norm humor of just the worst punchline after the biggest buildup.
It's like a 6-minute joke.
It is
for a pun,
and it's ridiculous. Well, I think one of the best skits he was a part of was,
actually, before you say that, let me just, for the Moth thing, because Conan O'Brien and Andy Richter did a special episode of their podcast a couple days ago just to remember Norm. And so apparently the Moth joke, Norm got that joke from Colin Quinn. But that joke, the way Colin Quinn told it, was 20 seconds long.
Yeah.
But what had happened was that Norm was on Conan's show. He had like 8 minutes of material prepared for a segment. And then they went to commercial, and then the producer was like, we need you to do another segment. We need another 7 minutes. And Norm didn't have anything. And he literally, the whole story about like the Moth and his Russian boss and like all that stuff, all of that he was making up on the fly just to fill that time. And it's some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. And Conan actually said on his podcast, he's like, as a host, sometimes I have to, amp up my laughter a little bit if somebody's telling a story that's maybe not working so well, whatever. He's trying to be a gracious host. He's like, if you ever want to see me actually laughing my head off, watch anything with Norm. That's me in my like natural. Anyway, so you were going to say about a skit.
When he was, it was essentially Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL, and he was Burt Reynolds, and that's
AKA Turd Ferguson.
exactly, and it's I remember, I think that was maybe one of the earlier ones that I'd seen of him as a kid, and I just thought it was like the funniest thing. And yeah, there's too many. Like, I've just been going through again, like, just compilation after compilation on YouTube, everything from SNL to stand-up bits to just award shows, like just roasting people mercilessly, especially OJ Simpson. Oh my god. Yeah, the dude was, but also I was listening to other comedians talk about him, and that's been really insightful, of just how much respect he had among other comedians for being so unique and being so true to himself, and not chasing anything. He wasn't chasing trends, he wasn't chasing fame, he wasn't just doing things that he thought other people would like. He did what he wanted, and that's incredible. Also, just hearing stories about how he's absolutely just insane. He's just like, he was just a crazy person. I think it was Jamie Kennedy. I know, who was it? It was, okay, I can't think of his name right now. But he was just telling this story, and again, this isn't like a huge story or a hilarious story with a big punchline. It was just like little things of like, where he was at a bar, and then Norm Macdonald called him on a phone at, like, this is like at noon. He was just hanging out watching some football, and Norm was like, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. I'm at this bar. Come by." He's like, "Okay, sure." 8 hours passed.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Everything was like, the game was over. The guy was hammered, and he was like leaving. And Norm just walks in like, "Hey, where are you going?" He's like, "What are you called me 8 hours ago, like a full work day ago." And he's just shit like that, where he's just kind of like, a lot of stories of that, of just calling up people randomly, like, "Come to my hotel," and just weirdness would follow. Right. So yeah, in addition to checking out his bits, like his comedy bits and guest spots on TV, I would recommend people seek out kind of, it's not the obituaries, but people remembering him.
Yeah.
Because you get some really great insights into who he was as a person, and that's been really fascinating and funny and touching to kind of go through this past week.
Yeah, I saw Seth Meyers talking about him, and he was saying that his all-time favorite Weekend Update joke, and of course Seth Meyers was the host of Weekend Update for years, his all-time favorite update joke, not Norm, but overall, was something about, Norm was talking about this 10-year-old billionaire had a birthday party. He's like, "If you'd like to know what a 10-year-old birthday party for a billionaire looks like, they had 2 cakes." I was like, that's such a fucking Norm joke, and I love it. Of course, on SNL, he was known for playing Bob Dole. Burt Reynolds, as you said. I loved his David Letterman, which apparently he kind of struggled to do because he loved David Letterman so much. He didn't want to make fun of him. But that was amazing. A couple other bits that I want to bring up. Actually, he did a stand-up special a few years back. I believe it was called Me Doing Stand-Up. And he told a joke, and it's kind of morbid now to think about it. But he told a joke that basically, like, something along, I don't want to try and, do the guy's joke, but something along the lines of, like, people always say they lost their battle to cancer, but when you die, the cancer dies too. So I wouldn't call that a loss. I'd call that a draw, which is funny. But then you think about, like, he had cancer when he was telling that joke. Because it was less than 9 years ago. So there's that. There is an epic and iconic bit from Conan's original show, the late night show, where I guess Norm was the original guest, the first guest, and Courtney Thorne Smith was the second guest. Have you seen this? Oh my goodness gracious me. If you guys haven't seen this, it's from like 20 years ago. I think if you go on YouTube, I think I usually see it called Norm Saves the Interview. Where basically Courtney Thorne Smith had just left, what was her show?
Oh, is this when it's the woman that was going to be in the movie with Carrot Top, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I have seen this. Yeah.
Yeah. She just left whatever show she was on. It wasn't 90210. It was one of those. And she left that to go do a movie with Carrot Top. And Norm is just being absolutely merciless So at one point, Conan says, what's this movie called? And Norm just jumps in and he's like, I think they should call it. If it's apparently that's my Norm impression.
Yeah.
But if it stars Carrot Top, you know what a good name would be? Box Office Poison. She's like, I'm in the movie. I'm sitting next to you. And my favorite line of the whole thing is he goes, I'm not making fun of her. I'm going to go see it for her because she's a lovely woman and a wonderful talk show guest, which that killed me.
Yeah. Oh,
and then at the end, Conan goes, okay, so what's the movie called? And she goes, Chairman of the Board. And Conan's like, oh, okay, do something with that, smart guy. And then without missing a beat, Norm goes, yeah, it's probably spelled Bored. And Conan like stands up and walks away from his chair because he's just dying. It is absolutely delightful.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
A couple other things I want to mention. I bought this years ago. I brought it down to show you all. This is Norm Macdonald's memoir. It's pretty sure it's mostly fictitious. This book is absolutely fucking hilarious. I read it in a couple of days, and I'm a slow reader, but I couldn't stop. But I was out with a buddy and I just bought it on a whim because I was like, it's a book by Norm Macdonald. I'm gonna love it. And of course I read it in my head in his voice. And I'm told you can get it on audiobook where he's actually reading it, which I'm sure would be amazing.
Perfect.
But never, I opened the book to the first page and I started laughing. Never have I read a book where the dedication page was fucking hilarious. But this dedication page reads, to Charles Manson, and then in brackets, not that one. Amazing. One final thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and I asked you about this in the chat last night. Norm had one movie that he starred in. It was directed by Bob Saget. I believe it was 1996 or 97. I'm not sure. The movie was called Dirty Work. It was him. It was Artie Lang. Chevy Chase was in it. Jack Warden was in it. Adam Sandler has a cameo. Gary Coleman has a cameo. Chris Farley. It's my favorite. There might be SNL sketches with Chris Farley that I like better, but as a film performance, this is the best thing I've ever seen Chris Farley do. Not to spoil too much, but he had his nose bit off by a Saigon whore, so they play that for some good jokes. The movie is basically about Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang are like best friends, and Norm's character Mitch has always had an excellent proclivity for getting revenge on people. So he decides to open a business, a revenge for hire business. And Christopher McDonald, who you guys may remember while we're talking SNL movies as Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore, he plays the villain here. He's just as slimy as Shooter, if not more. This movie, shot in Toronto, by the way, this movie is fucking hysterical. It is so good. I was talking to a couple buddies today. We were having a little Norm conversation. And I was saying, I would put it up there, and this is all, of course, my personal preference, but I would put Dirty Work up there, not maybe quite to the level, but like really, really close to Dumb and Dumber. And Dumb and Dumber to me is one of the funniest films ever made. It's so stupid, but it's so funny. This movie is absolutely absurd, but it is so quintessentially Norm. Like his delivery, everything about it, it gets very bizarre. There is one moment in the movie, and nobody's ever agreed with me on this. He's not even talking, he's just moving. I'm convinced he's doing a Michael Keaton impression. He's just kind of doing this thing, and the things he's doing with his face, I'm certain of it. But I guess we'll never know. So
those classic Michael Keaton impressions that everyone does.
But like if you watch it and you think Michael Keaton, I think you'll be able to see it.
All right, I'll check it out. No, I do want to see this now because I don't think I've even heard of this.
Yeah.
Prior to you mentioning it.
I don't think it got a terribly big theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably just picked it up randomly in like the Blockbuster. That's how old I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I saw it, I was crying laughing.
Yeah.
He gets the best out of Farley. I'm not a huge Chevy Chase guy. I really like him in this movie. He plays a doctor who's heavily in debt to sharks, so he's like throughout the movie he's increasingly more injured, which is great. It is absolutely hysterical. For anyone who has not seen Dirty Work, do yourself a favor. check it out because it is just so good.
Right on. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking out soon, and I'll let you know. Definitely going to be on a Norm bender or Norm kick for a while. Yeah, just too soon, man. Again, nobody knew. It seems like everybody, all of his, like a lot of his friends, Conan has talked about it. A lot of people just how shocked they were. And 61 is far too young. So a definite one of a kind that I don't think we're gonna see. We're never gonna see anyone quite like him.
No.
You know, there'll be other people that are their own, they're unique, they in their respective in that regard, but no one quite like Norm.
Yeah. And I will say, I think, and I try not to spend too much time thinking about death and all that because it's rather morbid, but I think, particularly if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, I think everyone has the right to go out in their own way. And, some people, I've heard some people saying that like to keep it secret is selfish because you're robbing people of the chance to prepare themselves. And I get that perspective, but at the end of the day, it's your life and it's your death. And he wanted to keep it secret. That's what he wanted to do. And you know what? More power to him because he did it. And he went out on his own terms. And I respect that very much.
No, I do too. I mean, I think that in I don't know. Hopefully there was someone in his life that knew. Hopefully, I don't know. But I do agree that I'm on your side in the sense that I don't think that it's selfish. I think that he, that's as personal as anything could possibly get. Your death, and you're faced with your own mortality. You don't owe anybody anything, and to kind of to deal with it on your own terms, I think is the only way to go about it. So I'm glad that he did what he felt was best, and I hope that he I hope that he continued to feel that this was the best thing to do. It's certainly, I don't know, maybe some people, I think just they don't want to deal with people treating them differently, and I think people will treat you differently if you tell them you have a terminal illness.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's a damn shame. It really, this is one of the few, and this is not me, saying anything negative about celebrities that pass, but there are some that it's like, oh, well, I never really resonated with their work. I wasn't, too familiar with them. Norm was definitely one that hurt. Like I was absolutely shocked when I heard, and he's meant so much to me in my life, and he's been such a comedic figure in my life that I just never even thought about him passing until years and years from now. So
it was really gutting, man. So I guess the only thing to say is rest in peace, Norm, and thank you for the laughs, man. It's you gave me a lot of them, gave us a lot of them, you gave us all a lot of them. So that is the show for today. Not to end on a bummer note, but hey, we're celebrating the man's life, we're celebrating the man's comedy, and so that is the show. We want to thank you guys for watching. Of course, we want to encourage you to drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Jump into the comments. Let us know what you thought of Cry Macho. Particularly, let us know what was your favorite Norm Mcdonald bit of all time. Of course, again, we want to let you know you can get audio versions of this podcast at Spotify, Google Podcasts, places like that. Before we sign off, Chris, where can people follow you online?
My Instagram handle, which is called Art of Light and Shadow. It's a fun daily kind of film blog. I post about things that I'm watching recently. I do some movie rankings, and there's a lot of community, voting on and stuff like that. A lot of fun, like community events that I've been trying to do. It's been a lot of fun. So check it out. Art of Light and Shadow.
And if you want to check out Andris, who of course was not here today, go on YouTube, do a search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He reviews basically low budget horror and sci-fi movies from the dawn of cinema to the modern era. It's a great little channel. Check it out for sure. You're already on my channel, so you know where to find me. But if you haven't subscribed, I would love you forever if you did. And that's the show. Again, we just want to say thank you for watching. And of course, be safe out there, be healthy, and we will see you guys next week. Okay? Take care, everybody.
Everyone. Bye.